stop being stupid and sheep, okay?
This is Josh Feuerstein. If you're unfamiliar with this guy, he made the rounds in the atheist community on YouTube back in, I don't know, 2014 to 2016, somewhere in that vicinity. At the time, he had a Facebook page with 2 million subbies on it, I think. I tried to find his Facebook page. It doesn't seem to be up now. I don't know where he's posting. The Gram, maybe? Who knows? Who knows? I don't know exactly, but he's decided to run for Congress. Seriously. Well, he's running for Texas Congress. Now, let me get this out right out of the gate. I don't think he has a chance. Okay, I don't think he's going to win. But this is more a refresher to show you guys who we have running for the Texas State Congress here. His post says, "Today, my wife and 6 homeschooled children," oh my God, that sounds miserable, "joined me to file for Texas State House. It's time we have a real conservative representing the families in our district. We don't want a representative whose vote has been bought by drunk dade felon." I don't know what that means, and I hope I didn't just say a slur inadvertently. I have no idea what that is. Anyways, so yeah, he's running for office, unfortunately, for state Congress. Yeah, state representative. So let's talk about him. This video went semi-viral within the atheist community all the way back in 2015, early December 2015. Give it a little bit of lead up here. He was talking about abortion and how much he hates it, and he got really, really descriptive with it, inaccurately, of course. But I decided to cut that part out because I don't want to deal with, YouTube and everything. But listen to what he said after talking about abortion here.
So let me get this right. Tonight, America's crying about an old lion named Cecil that was...
Right. Cecil the lion had been killed recently by a hunter at this time, and people were not happy about it.
Named Cecil that was killed by some dipwad who cut his head off and left his body there. But check this out. You guys are crying.
Yeah, that was all the anti-abortion stuff in the middle. I don't even want to bother playing it. It was false.
And you guys are crying about a lion, but what about the babies? You know what I call that? I call that being a hypocrite. I say tonight, we punish Planned Parenthood. I think it's time that abortion doctors should have to run and hide and be afraid for their life instead of some hunter. Both are wrong, but one is a lion. The other are humans. Stand up for humans.
The dude just straight up called for violence in front of 2 million followers on Facebook. That is psychotic. How is he not in jail for this? Quick interjection, this won't take long. I just want to say, if you want to support my channel, the best way you can do it is by watching this video to the end, or at least watching a little bit longer than you would have otherwise. YouTube's recommendation algorithm works off of watch time. You can also subscribe to the channel, like the video, and check out my Patreon. Link is in the description for that. All right, back to the video. I mean, I think the dude took this post down nearly immediately, but it reached an awful lot of people first. And you know that Planned Parenthood and just general abortion services have been dealing with extremists and bomb threats and, attacks with weapons for decades, honestly. Absolutely psychotic. How did he get away with this? How did he not go to jail for that? Isn't this directly inciting violence? I don't understand. Anyway, again, let's continue moving on through his history of questionable posts. This one is from somewhere around when COVID started. I'm not sure exactly when. But, of course, the dude's complaining about masks and stuff, right?
So there's all these videos going viral on the internet of these Costco Karens holding their phones up, videoing these people that refuse to wear masks, calling them names and sending a message to them about, look.
I don't remember anything about that. I suppose maybe, but I'm super skeptical. It sounds like he's got himself in this little echo chamber that pushes these videos on him 24/7, honestly. Who knows? Maybe that really did happen.
Message to them, look, my video is not for the people that refuse to wear masks. It's for the people instead that think that the government has the right to mandate mask wearing. So here's a message for you the best way you can understand it.
That's us, guys. You ready for his message? All right, lay the message on me there, Josh.
fellas, stop being stupid and sheep, okay? So if you agree with me, take a moment, click share, and as always, God bless. Have a very, very beautiful day.
It's so stupid, it's painful. I'm sorry. I apologize for subjecting you to that. That is so terrible. I never thought that I would hear somebody wearing stripes with a faux hawk. Bleeding? Is that what it's called? Bleeding like a sheep. It's just painful. Sheeple. Stop being sheeple. God. All right, this is where the guy actually got famous, I think. August 25th, 2014, or at least this is where he started doing the rounds in atheist YouTube. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's probably been a while either way, so let's talk about it. He's holding up a sign that says the $100,000 Atheist Challenge, okay? Of course, you know, this has been debunked a billion times over, but he never coughed up the $100,000, right?
What's up, Josh Feuerstein here. So I'm here to issue the $100,000 Atheist Challenge to anybody that could provide me proof or evidence that God does not exist. I think.
Okay, I'm not sure which God he's talking about here. He just said God. So I assume that I can just prove any God, any specific God that I choose doesn't exist, right? I guarantee that the God that Josh Feuerstein believes in, this hateful, vengeful, nutcase God who hates gay people, it generally hates minority groups, I guarantee that that God isn't real. You know how I know that? Because the New Testament, the book upon which you base your beliefs, never talks about a God like that. Never details a God that hates people, that wants people dead, and all that stuff. Complete nonsensical garbage. Now, I would be willing to bet this guy is a Trinitarian. That means Jesus was God, right? So he should be going to Jesus for his information solely. I don't know why he would go beyond Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John when all the information you should need is right there. Didn't Jesus say it all? Wasn't he here for 33 years or something like that? Shouldn't he be your main source? Why would you need to go to Paul, somebody who didn't even know Jesus? Why would you need to go to him for information on the Christian church? You shouldn't. Stick to the gospel. As a matter of fact, stick to Mark, the first gospel written, or the earliest gospel that we have. Within the bounds of the book of Mark, about Jesus' life, there is no God described like the one that Josh Feuerstein believes in. I guess I'm kind of took the low-hanging fruit with pointing out that the God he believes in isn't real. Let me just say, I have no idea if a God kicked us all into being, or if it was an alien species, or if it was just natural, or what. I don't know. I suppose it could have been a God. Certainly not Josh's God. But I feel it's pretty easy to disprove the billions of gods, or however many, that Hinduism has. Pretty straightforward to disprove the Muslim God, which is effectively the Christian God, except in different clothes, I suppose. He has no problem with that. He agrees with all that. It's just his interpretation of God that he is trying to get you to challenge or whatever.
For evidence that God does not exist. I think it's rather ridiculous that there's been people for a long time that have said that God does not exist, and yet they're unarmed because they have zero evidence and zero proof. How?
Well, that's the problem. There is no evidence or proof. Why is this guy coming in and claiming that he knows for a fact that there is a God and his God hates gay people and everybody else? How is it that he can say that so confidently with zero evidence or proof? Okay. I mean, he's trying to flip the burden of proof. He's trying to make somebody else prove him wrong when he's the one that should be proving him right. He's the one that made the claim. The burden to prove it is on his shoulders. I can claim until I'm blue in the face that there's a little elf that lives in my sock drawer and keeps stealing my socks. I mean, and I have some evidence even, a little bit, circumstantial at least, my socks keep going missing, right? But I don't expect you to believe that without any other evidence. I have the burden of proof to explain it to you, to prove it to you. Until I do show you real, hard, tangible evidence, you have no reason to believe it. You know, I talk about these contradictions in the Bible and everything. Let me put my money where my mouth is. Take a look at this. This is called the BibViz Project, And every red line that you see here is a Bible contradiction. Let's just pick one at random. Can God be found? God will be found by those who seek him. Proverbs 2, Proverbs 8, Matthew 7, Luke 11. Luke 11. God will not be found by those who seek him. Psalm 18, Proverbs 1, Lamentations 3, 3:8 and 3:44. Luke 13. Let's pick out another contradiction here. Let's see. What do we got? Is it okay to use perfume? It's an interesting one, right? Yes is espoused by Proverbs 27:9. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. So does the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Esther 2:8-12. John 12:3. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard. Never heard of spikenard before. Love it, though. Metal name. Very closely, and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. So wearing perfume and using scented stuff, scented oils, is okay. These verses espouse that idea. The ones that say you shouldn't use scented perfumes, Exodus 30:37. And as for the perfume which thou shalt make, ye shall not make to yourselves according to the composition thereof. It shall be unto thee holy for the Lord. Okay, wow, that was a wild verse. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Isaiah 57:9. And you went to the king with ointment and increased the perfume and sent the messengers far off and debased yourself even unto hell. There are a billion examples of contradictions all through the Bible. There are more contradictions and errors than there are verses or words in the New Testament.
Evidence and zero proof. How would that ever hold up in a court of law? You see, if we were to look at absolute truth, and we were to look at the totality of all knowledge, all scientific facts, everything, and we were to be able to draw a circle that would represent it, it would look something like this, broad and expansive and large. And yet it is that if you were to draw a circle of everything that you know, every experience, every scientific fact that you've ever learned, whether in school or study, it would probably look something more like this.
Sure, okay.
Now, don't you think it's ironic that there's people that have lived in this little circle their entire life that are trying to claim that there's no God that exists outside of their knowledge? Because
I'm not actually claiming that. I'm okay with the idea that maybe there is. I just don't know if it was a God that lives out there or aliens or what. But I can guarantee you it's not your version of Jesus, because your version of God is self-contradictory. It makes no sense at all. You believe God is omniscient and omnipotent, but he allows suffering in the world. He's benevolent. He's all good, completely good, but he allows children to suffer terribly. Either God does not exist, I mean his iteration of God at the very least, or he's not good. Either he's not all-powerful or he's not all good. It has to be one. In Josh Feuerstein's world, he is both all-powerful and all good, and also lets children die of hunger every single day. Your version of God is contradictory. It's wrong. It doesn't exist. I am 100% sure of that for that reason. Now come up with an explanation for the problem of impotence versus evil, and then we'll talk. Once again, he has the burden of proof, not me.
Outside of their knowledge. Therefore, because they've never experienced him, he doesn't exist. Now, the problem with truth and absolute truth is I believe that this generation doesn't like that concept because it means that there's moral law.
Absolute truth? This generation doesn't like absolute truth? What's he talking about? What does he mean by absolute truth, and what does he mean by this generation? I just talked about this not too long ago. Let me give you a quote. The clothes people wear is getting more debased as we go on, and the language people use is obscene. Sounds like something a modern televangelist would say, right? That's a quote from Yoshida Kenko, Essays in Idleness, 1330. Entertainment today is consuming and poisoning people's mind and corrupting the morals of children. The Memoirs of the Bloomsgrove Family, Reverend Enos Hitchcock, 1790. The actual quote was, I'm paraphrasing the quotes, the actual quote from them was, the free access which many young people have to romances, novels, and plays. The free access young people have to relationships. with each other, just being in a romantic relationship and reading books and watching plays. That's what he said, for real. Has poisoned the mind and corrupted the morals of many a promising youth. Quote unquote. This line is a joke. It drives me insane. Don't be like this when you get older, okay? I'm begging you.
Because I believe that this generation doesn't like that concept because it means that there's moral law. It means that now that there's something that they will one day have to answer to. In fact, if you were to ask an atheist, I don't think he would ever actually be able to condemn something like the Holocaust. And
I condemn the Holocaust. Boom. See how easy that was? Now let's hear you condemn the Holocaust, Josh Feuerstein. Dude that is Nazi adjacent at the very least.
Something that they will one day have to answer to. In fact, if you were to ask an atheist, I don't think he would ever actually be able to condemn something like the Holocaust.
I condemn it.
The killing of millions and millions of innocent people. Why? Because he just believes that they're an accident. They're just merely some molecular structure that...
I don't believe that.
That they're just part of this scientific thing called evolution.
Okay, well, people are a product of evolution, or we have evolved over many, many, many generations. That's a fact. I don't care if you disagree with that or not. I think that there's something special about humans, though. We are different from rocks in that we have a spark of life, in the same way that a seed has a spark of life, or a bird, or anything, a banana. It all has a spark of life, and that makes it special and unique and fascinating, and it makes it the most valuable or even the most precious and priceless thing in the universe. I don't view people as just an accident and worthless in any way. I view every human life as extremely important. Not one life should be lost ever, and we should take extreme measures to prevent it. You know who agreed with me on that? I would say Jesus probably did, right? Whatever you did to the weakest of my brothers and sisters, you did to me.
Survival of the fittest. Well, how then was Hitler just not the fittest? How can you ever condemn something like that? In fact,
okay, survival of the fittest is a single catchphrase that sums up a single component of the theory of evolution. It doesn't apply to Hitler in any way, shape, or form. It's a completely nonsensical comparison. I'm not even going to bother with it. Hitler was evil. See how easy that is? Hitler bad. I agree.
or condemn something like that. In fact, I would challenge you this. If you were to look around the world in any society, in almost any country, in any sets of laws, murder is something that is illegal. Why is it something that is illegal universally? Because man knows it's wrong to murder someone else. If we were just some biological concept as far as a human being and a man, how would we have that knowledge? Except that the Bible says that God writes those precepts upon our hearts.
This is fascinating right here. This is one of the most interesting things that I find in Christian extremists specifically, okay? Think about this justification. He just justified everybody having a unified idea of, you know, murder being evil, right? And he says it's because God wrote it on our hearts. What would have happened if not everybody had a unified idea that murder was wrong? He would be sitting here talking about how Christians are superior because they believe this and that and blah, blah, blah. And God gave us a moral law that we're following and it's part of our society and all that other stuff. So he's found a convenient little way to make himself more important and to validate his beliefs no matter what. He's using this as proof for God. There is no scenario in which this doesn't act as proof for God. Whether it's true or it's not true, in his mind, it's proof. It's absurd.
How is it that every society around the world would agree that murder is wrong? In fact,
I mean, that's a product of empathy, by the way. If you don't know, like, how this evolved exactly, we have these things called mirror neurons in our brain. And mirror neurons, when I was in college for psychology, they were showing pictures of cute little monkeys jumping around and doing their thing or whatever, right? And then out of nowhere, they showed a picture of a mannequin head with grapes in it and a razor coming across the grapes. And it was like horrifying because I was using my mirror neurons at that moment to identify with what I was watching. And I felt like it was happening to me. That is the basis of empathy. That right there gave us the ability to work cooperatively in groups and care about each other. We could build models in our heads of scenarios that we saw playing out. We could build models in our heads of what other people were experiencing and apply it to ourselves. We want to take down a big woolly mammoth, so we have 6 people with us, and 2 of those people are scaring it through a trap, and the other 4 are on the other side with a big net, and they throw it over the mammoth like it's a butterfly net or whatever. We could work together in tandem because we could build models in our heads. That's the basis for empathy, and empathy is the basis for modern morality. Now, like I said earlier, there isn't a single moral precept that the Bible espouses that I can think of that isn't reversed a chapter later. You can find a verse that espouses any moral position in the Bible. Any. This guy has gone through the Bible, found the ones that he likes the best, and holds them up as a bastion of his moral system. Perfect example of it. See, the Bible supports my moral system, and I support the Bible's moral system. In reality, he picked out the ones that he liked the most and ran with it.
Upon our hearts. How is it that every society around the world would agree that murder is wrong? In fact, I guarantee that if there were no laws and no government, that you would feel wrong inside of you killing somebody. Why? Because God's written it on your heart.
Yeah, it couldn't be that we have a basis for morality called empathy. It has to be Jesus. He's in there somewhere, right? Absolutely absurd. This is an absurd human being. Check this one out. August 18th, 2014. I love covering this dude. He is just, God, he's got problems.
Hey guys, Josh Feuerstein here. The other day I had an atheist tell me that I was an idiot, moronic, and stupid for believing in God, that he created this world, because it took way too much faith to believe in a process like that, while he believed in what he called the science of evolution.
Okay, this is a weird conversation to be recounting to us. Did this even happen? I'm skeptical, but all right, let's run with it. By the way, if you guys know Mr. Atheist, this video is where he got his name from. Josh Feuerstein used to start his videos with, "Dear Mr. Atheist."
Well, let's go ahead and let's do this. Dear Mr. Atheist.
That's where he got his name. Isn't that funny? Mr. Atheist? Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. Let's keep listening.
Let's do this. Dear Mr. Atheist, first of all, let me correct you. Because evolution is not a science, never has, and never will be. Why? Because it cannot fit within the parameters and parentheses of science for one simple reason. It was never observed.
Simply false. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if it was observed. Yeah, it was. It was observed by the time that this guy posted this video. I mean, directly observed. Now, evolution has different components to it, right? There are different pillars of evolution. There's the selection process, natural selection, sexual selection, artificial selection, and then there's the gene duplication pillar, where when something reproduces, asexually or sexually, genes are duplicated and put into the chain. So you have multiple genes for blue eyes, for example, or you have multiple genes for like dark skin, but they're redundant. You don't need them. And here's the third pillar, gene mutation. Sometimes those mutations happen in places they should not. Like, for example, a gene mutation happens that creates sickle-celled red blood cells. The blood cells that carry oxygen through your body can't carry oxygen as efficiently anymore, and you get winded easier, and it's hard to do physical activities. Sickle cell anemia. That was a devastating mutation. But in some circumstances, those mutations are good, and the people that have them survive easier. Malaria was passing through the region where people had this genetic mutation that they had passed on to their offspring, and malaria could not attach to the red blood cells, so they were immune to it. The people that survived went on to reproduce, and the people that didn't survive didn't reproduce as much. That's the selection process, natural selection. That's how evolution works. And interestingly enough, we have actually observed each of these 3 pillars individually in nature, but we watched the entire process take place over the span of 30 years, if you can believe it. E. coli bacteria has a generational time span of, I feel like 8 hours, I think, or something. E. coli reproduces like every 8 hours, I think. How often does it? Every 20 minutes. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's every 20 minutes, right? It's hard to see genetic variation in the lifespan of humans because humans live for so long. But on average, you'll get about 70 gene mutations per new child that's born to humans. Well, E. coli has new offspring every 20 minutes, and over the course of 30 years, E. coli bacteria actually evolved the ability, right in front of our eyes, to consume citrate, an ability it did not have previously. That was evolution in the works. We were watching it take place. There are a billion other examples. There are some studies done with fruit flies and things like that. But you know what? Josh Feuerstein and people like him like to pull those examples apart. But the E. coli one is airtight. There is no pulling this one apart. We watched evolution happen in front of us. So you're just wrong here, Josh. And he was wrong back then too, I believe.
One simple reason. It was never observed. That's why it's not science. That's why it's called the theory of evolution.
I mean, I know I don't even need to say this to my audience, but I'm going to say it anyway for anybody who's unaware. A scientific theory is the pinnacle of science. That's where you want to be as a scientific idea. You want to be a theory. That's as high as it goes. That means an overarching framework that describes a detailed process. And from theories, we can derive laws. The theory of relativity allows us to derive the law of gravity. Of course, we knew about these laws long before, but that was part of the evidence that Einstein used to formulate the theory of relativity. And germ theory of disease, another one. People get sick. That's the evidence that we have that there's a process taking place. We create a hypothesis. We make predictions. We falsify everything. We try to falsify. We try to prove it wrong. And when we simply cannot prove it wrong and it's absolutely verified beyond a shadow of a doubt, then it becomes a theory. Okay. Again, I know I didn't have to explain, but just in case. Never know.
One thing that science demands, maybe you've heard of something called the law of thermodynamics, which means that chaos can never produce order.
That's the law of thermodynamics. I think what he means to say is the second law of thermodynamics says that entropy will increase when fuel is not fed into a system. That's the second law. But the point is, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He has no clue. He's just spouting off stuff that he's heard before. The second law of thermodynamics says entropy will increase if fuel isn't being fed into a system. Entropy is disorder in a system. It's molecules going all over the place and getting confused, being disordered. Humans are extremely well-organized molecules, extremely well-organized systems. The second law of thermodynamics acts as a proof against evolution a lot of the time, except the Earth isn't a closed system. There is fuel being fed into this system. It's called the sun. It's feeding heat, energy, and light into the system, which is absorbed by plants through a process of photosynthesis using chlorophyll, blah, blah, blah. You remember all that. And then bigger creatures eat the plants, and then bigger creatures eat the bigger creatures, and it just goes on from there. And we're consuming energy and trading it off, and so on and so forth. The sun is our source of energy. It's not a closed system. The Earth isn't. So this guy's doing what's called a Gish Gallop. He's just hitting a billion different ridiculous claims over and over and over again and hoping that you don't pull apart any of them. Hoping you don't have time to think about any one of them. Lucky for me, I have a pause button.
You've heard of something called the law of thermodynamics, which means that chaos can never produce order. Look at the world that we live in.
That's not what it says. The second law says things tend to move toward chaos unless fuel is fed into a system. A car engine will eventually run down and decay unless gasoline is fed into it to keep it powered, you know.
The world that we live in, the sun goes up, the moon comes out, we travel around the sun, we have years, we have days, we have seasons.
You know the most surprising thing about what he just said? The fact that he's not a flat earther. I totally would have pegged him as a flat earther.
We have years, we have days, we have seasons. The tide comes in and out. Everything works
We got Bill. He's harnessing his inner Bill O'Reilly over here.
out. Everything works like a clock. It has order. And yet, you cannot argue.
He doesn't understand what order means. He's using it in a completely backwards way that is not in any way in a scientific context. He doesn't understand what the word... He's not even using the right word, is entropy. He doesn't understand what the word entropy is. Does he even know that word? Probably not.
You cannot argue that a world that has order came out of an accident because it defies the very logic and laws of science.
It does not.
You see, you think it takes a lot of faith for me to believe in a God that created this world, a God that created order, and yet...
Look, that's possible. I'm not saying that it takes a lot of faith. I'm just saying it's kind of a stupid position to hold with zero evidence. You know what is ridiculous and does take a lot of faith to believe? This bastardized version of the Christian extremist God that hates gay people and all kinds of others. This bastardized version of God that loves Donald Trump and loves people that try to ruin other people's lives at any cost, like Josh Feuerstein directly calling for violence against doctors who perform abortions, that kind of thing. It takes faith to believe that there's a God out there that does that. It takes faith to believe that there's a God out there who is all-powerful and all-knowing and all-good simultaneously. He knows that there are children starving. He knows he has the power to fix it, but he doesn't. Either he's not all-powerful or he's not all-good.
What if I were to tell you that somewhere in Oklahoma, a tornado rolls through a junkyard full of a bunch of old cars, and somewhere on the other side of that tornado, out of that junk pile, it magically produces a perfectly red, shiny, working Lamborghini? You would tell me I was nuts.
Well, God, these analogies are just awful, and they're so... this was said by every Christian evangelical apologist from here to Texas for 10 years, all of these claims. A car is man-made, and it doesn't have a process to decrease entropy because fuel cannot be fed into a car that way. We have to be the ones to feed the fuel in. But there's a process called photosynthesis that feeds that feeds energy into the system that we have here. And we just have to start with one little thing, and that one little thing, that single-celled organism, can grow and grow and grow and expand and multiply and produce as many of itself as it possibly can, and all the while it's mutating and duplicating its genes. Cars do not duplicate genes and mutate when they reproduce. That's a fundamental piece of the process. This guy just doesn't understand evolution. Doesn't understand the first thing about it, apparently.
Tell me I was nuts. You would tell me that I had lost it. You would probably try to admit me into the psychiatric ward. Why? Because that is absolutely stupid. I mean, how much faith would it really take to believe something as idiotic as that? It had to be by intelligent design.
Oh, okay, so he actually believes that evolution is real, but God kicked it into gear, basically. That's the intelligent idea. That's the intelligent design idea. This is actually litigated a long time ago in court and determined to be complete pseudoscientific nonsense, intelligent design. The crux of the argument is there is something called irreducible complexity. A wing is so complex that you can't imagine a situation in which a chicken just evolves 2 wings out of nowhere one day, and then it can fly away. Irreducible complexity. Under what circumstance could a wing just evolve out of nowhere? And that was dealt with. I mean, that's explained by science. We understand this process very, very well. And again, we can watch it with our own eyes play out in front of us. It's as simple as starting with a small change that builds on top of a small change and builds and builds and builds and builds. And whichever organism has the most advantage in its environment is the one that reproduces the most. That's it. There is no irreducible complexity. There is no intelligent design. You want to say that God sparked it all into being. God put everything here. He spoke and boom, the Big Bang took place. Okay, I'm fine with that. I'm good. Hell, you want to say God is guiding evolution? Okay, great. But this whole process, all of it, the planet spinning around the sun, creatures evolving from lower life forms, every last bit of this is doable without a God. The world, the universe, looks exactly how it would look if there were no God. So I'm not saying there isn't one. I'm just saying you have no reason to believe in one by looking at science. The only way you can believe in one is through faith. And that's fine. That's fine. Have your faith. Just don't try to downplay science and talk smack about it and try to pretend that it's not real or whatever. It's just ridiculous.
So, dear Mr. Atheist, who really has to have a lot of faith today to believe in their theory?
Anyway, that's Josh Feuerstein. Absolute joker. Running for Congress in Texas. Just awful. Again, I doubt he's going to win. You know, people who jump from social media to real world, like mainstream running for office or whatever, they don't usually do well. Even people with massive followings, like Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks ran for office in California, I think, and got bodied in the election. And he's like got millions and millions of people that watch him. So anyways, yeah, it just doesn't transfer very well. I doubt he's going to win, but we'll see. If you're in Texas, you need to vote against this guy. Let me know what you think about it in the comments.